So just a reminder that we will be recording. So if you don't want to appear, please just minimize your, not minimize, turn your camera off. That's what I'm trying to say. Would be great. And I'll get a little slideshow up because I think it sometimes helps us to follow along, doesn't it? Lovely. Can everyone see that? Yeah, looks good. Fantastic. So as I said, my name's Anna, and we're going to be thinking about how to help families feel connected and cared for in Sunday services. Now, I very much want you guys to input on this. I'm aware all churches are different. Anyway, your context is different, and then we're all still at a slightly different place of coming back from COVID and what that looks like, what our capacity is, how comfortable our families are to be in the building, what provision we have for them. So I would love you, as we go along, to type in the chat and share what's worked for you, what your issues are, what your questions are, and we can kind of problem solve this and troubleshoot a little bit together. But where this really started for me, and I would love a show of hands, you can raise your hand in sort of the official clicky way or just put your hand up. But have you ever seen someone pacing around either in a church service or outside a creche room with a really grumpy baby or toddler who's screaming? And you have a conversation, or you can tell by their expression what's going on, that they're just thinking, why am I here? Why did I bother? This is nap time, or they're teething, or they're like in a real tantrum phase, and coming to church is just really, really hard work. Why am I here? Or maybe, and you can raise your hand to this as well, have you ever thought about inviting someone to church, maybe a friend or a neighbour who's got a baby or a toddler, and you've just had a little bit of a pause and thought, oh, I'm all for inviting people to church, but actually, how would this work in practice? How would they find it bringing along their baby or toddler to our church? Are we set up in it for a way that's going to make them feel welcome and comfortable? Yeah, okay. I'm seeing quite a few hands raised. That has been my experience, and not because churches aren't brilliant and trying to do those things, but it's a really tricky age and stage just to do anything in life, like to go shopping and to get out of the house, to go to groups and all those kind of things. And church can be the most amazing, supportive community to families with babies and toddlers. But we do need to make some tweaks because it's not automatically the best place. And I think just with a little bit of thinking and a little bit of preparation, we can really change people's experience and make those people walking around wondering why they're there a thing of the past. So that's what we're aiming for, if that's all right. So we're going to look over the next 40 minutes at some things that we can do to help. And as I was praying about this, there were kind of three things that came to mind. So firstly, how can we help people know what to expect and help them to feel welcome? So this actually is about all the work we need to do before they even arrive or visit. What do we need to do in the lead up? Secondly, how can we help them to find their place within the service? Now, I'm going to unpack a little bit more of what I mean there, but it's to do with, what do you do once you physically got to church and you're standing there or sitting there with your baby or toddler? How can you engage with the service? How can you do more than keep your child plied with snacks or entertain with toys to kind of keep them quiet? How can we make it something that both the parent and carer and the child can engage with and really get something from? And then thirdly, I'm just going to touch on a little bit the kind of creche room or space or corner. Many churches have some version of that. And just really what the purpose of that is and how we can make sure we're fulfilling that purpose and that it's a safe space that people want to come to. Yeah, so those are kind of the things that we're going to be looking at. And as I say, do add your thoughts and ideas. I can't always see the chat at the same time as well as sharing everything. So if I don't respond to you immediately, don't worry, because I'll come back to it again. Yeah, Anne's just said people expect that a church service is going to be a battle to keep their children still and quiet. Absolutely. I feel very strongly that the parents should not be the ones running the creche or Sunday school. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of yeses and lots of agreement. Brilliant. So let's work on this together and see what we can do differently. Little tweaks, little changes. Yeah, let's not make it too big, okay? She says, now trying to advance her slide. Okay, oh wait, I don't want to reveal that too early. Right, so I want you to take a moment. You can close your eyes if you would like to, or just pause and reflect where you are. And imagine that you have a baby or a toddler. You may have had one in the past or borrowed one, so that might not be too hard. But imagine you have a baby or a toddler and you've never been to your church before, but you're thinking of coming. So you might be trying it as a one-off. You might be attending a baptism service or something like that. But so picture yourself there. You've got this baby or toddler and you're thinking about coming to church. What questions are you going to have? So start typing in the chat now. What might you be worried about? What might you want to know? What sort of questions do you have? How long will it go? Yeah, how long is it going to be? I love that 3 people went that straight away. What happens if they cry? What if she cries? I think that's cries as well. Do I have to keep them quiet? Will I feel welcome? How do I leave? James, that is such a good question. Baby changing facilities. Is there someone to change them? Where are the toilets? Will there be toys? Can I leave my children in creche as a visitor? Great question. You're very in sync, guys. I feel like 2 or 3 of you have written the question at the same time. What happens if they're crying or making a noise? Am I allowed to come with my child? Yeah. Is the room accessible for a pram? Can I stand at the back? Will someone get me if they're upset? Yeah, so I think that's talking about if you've left them in a creche room, left them with other people. Can I give them food during the sermon? If I'm an adult, can I sneak some of their snacks during the sermon if it's going on long? You didn't put that, but I added that bit in. Anything else? What are you worried about? My child doesn't like to be left. Can I stay with them? How much noise is acceptable within the service? Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of it. Can I breastfeed? Yeah. Will everyone stare at me? Will people expect me to leave my child somewhere? Yeah, so there's lots of things coming up there around the choice. Will I be forced to leave my child? Or what happens if they're upset? What if I don't feel comfortable? Are there other children? Yeah, brilliant question. Are my children important? Yeah, how adapting your understanding is the church to a child with autistic behaviours? What if my toddler starts walking around? Fantastic. Guys, you are doing, and I know lots of you have already done this, what if my kids hear from God? Can they share too? Yeah. You are doing this work. I really want to say that a huge part of your work and a huge part of your welcome starts way before anyone walks through the door. Now, where are people going to look to get answers to these questions? Where would you look if you were that person? You can type in the chat or unmute yourself. Facebook, website. Yeah. Website or Facebook. A friend who attends. Yeah. Website. Okay, so we can help people feel welcome, help them know what to expect, and help them to feel at ease by thinking through some of these questions and getting out information somewhere where people will look. So that is probably going to be, depending on your church, but it's probably going to be your website. It's probably going to be social media. It could be to do with equipping people who are bringing other people, so making sure that people in your church have this information. So you might want to produce it as like a little leaflet or a little guide. If you've got it as a downloadable thingy on your website anyway, then it's not too hard to have some printed out. From the toddler group, yeah, absolutely. So when I was doing this in when I was in local church ministry, we made a little guide, and it was something that we gave out when people started at the toddler group, and also something that we had at the back of church and encouraged people to take if they were going to bring along friends and family who had babies and toddlers. Rachel says none of these questions would be added on our websites. Yes, I appreciate you may not be the person who gets to decide what's on your website. But is there a link to your Facebook page, your Facebook group, and could you have it in the files there? Are you allowed to reference it for them to go somewhere else? Debbie's saying some of these are relevant to older children as well. Yeah, absolutely. So,
sorry, can I just say that I don't mean that I wouldn't be able to add it to the website. I just mean that those aren't the sort of things that would be included in the church website for us. Obviously, it would be like church history, it would be times of masses, it would be what events are happening. It wouldn't be this is why our church is welcome, which is more an issue than it is it's an observation of our church more than anything.
Yeah, certainly. And I think you'll all be in different contexts of what your websites look at the moment and what you might be allowed to add. And that might not be the best place, or you might not be allowed to put it on your website. I guess I'm just encouraging you to think, if people have these questions, where will they look and how can we help answer them in advance? So I'm going to run through a lot of the things you've already said. James says, keep pushing your church leader. Yeah, you can do that. You can just keep asking until they say yes. So some questions that often come up, many of which you've already thought of. Firstly, can I bring my baby or toddler to church? For us, it is blindingly obvious, hopefully, that children and babies are welcome. But there might be an assumption, particularly if there aren't any other children in the church, that that's something that's not allowed or not approved of. So if babies and toddlers are welcome in your church, make that really obvious. Start off your guide or your video or the bit on your website and just say, we would love you to come along to church with your children, whatever age they are. This is something that you guys picked up on. Is it okay if I arrive late or leave early? So you can have your service times, but one of the things that often comes up that people find really stressful is either that the baby naps at a certain time or eats at a certain time, or that they don't, and it's entirely unpredictable. And if they fall asleep 5 minutes before the service, then the parent's gonna wait in the car for 10 minutes. Or if they have a nappy explosion that requires serious cleanup and the bath, and they're 15 minutes late, can they still come into church? So you might want to say, we understand it's really hard to get places for a certain time with a young child. Feel free to walk in if you're late. If your child's hungry or you need to head off early, that's absolutely fine. Again, if that's not true, don't say it, but just bear in mind that that might be a question that people have. So how can you answer their questions and speak to that question or that fear? This was one that you guys mentioned. Where can I breastfeed or prepare my baby's bottle? Make sure you're catering for both of those preferences. And if at all possible, something that was coming out in what you were saying before, give people options. Sometimes we can be really well-meaning and say, we have this room where you can breastfeed and there's a video, there's an audio link for the service or something. Great. But if people are also welcome to breastfeed and stay within the church service and they feel comfortable with that, please make sure that they know that as well, because otherwise it can feel like, oh, I've been told I have to stay in this room and that's my only choice. Bear in mind, people are going to need to give babies bottles and things. Do you have access to hot water? Do you have places where people can heat up food? If that's, some of this stuff, you're like, you don't know my context, you don't know my church. This is a distant dream. But I'm just giving you the spread, because obviously we're talking to lots of different people. And maybe with some tweaks, you could have one of those plug-in bottle warmers in the creche area or something. I don't know, maybe that wouldn't be a big deal. But obviously adapt this to your context. Where can I give my baby or toddler food? Depends a little bit on the timing of your services, but my church used to meet 11:15 till 1 o'clock. So there was absolutely no way that my 3 under 5s were going to get to that point without having food. And so we just had to be really explicit and have a whole area where the floor was covered and it was okay, and high chairs and stuff, and just say, we recognise because of the timing of our services that small people will need to eat or they will be angry and hangry. And so here is the provision we have for this. But, children eat at all sorts of times. If it's just snacks, are they allowed to give those in the service? Do you mention that? Do you provide snacks? And if so, what are you doing about allergies? Or is there an option to have high chairs or something like that just makes it so much easier? That stage where they're crawling and running away, it's really hard to get them to sit still, but they do want to eat. And that can make a massive difference to someone's experience. Another question, what age does my baby go to creche, or whatever you call it? If your creche is called Climber, Scrambler, Twinkle Toe, Blessings, that's wonderful, but don't assume that people know what that is. Please be really explicit. This is a room where parents can come and play with their babies and toddlers. There are toys, this is what's here. Or this is a space where you can drop your child off. And lots of you picked up on this, do I have to go in with them or can I keep them with me? Sometimes there's an assumption that because there is a creche room or creche facility, that all parents have to go there with their children. It's what we were talking about earlier, about giving options, giving choice wherever we can, and just being really honest about what that is so that people can choose what works best for them, what's right for their family. Where can I change my baby's nappy? Are there changing facilities that are accessible to men and women? Do you have change mats or a potty or a toilet seat or a step? Are those in the men's toilets as well as the women's and the disabled? That's something that sometimes gets overlooked. Super practical. Can I bring my buggy or pushchair into church? If so, can I keep it with me? Where do I leave it? Can I park nearby? Parking is really stressful if you're trying to work out timings and all of that kind of thing. So make sure you include that information. Some of these things, the answer for your church will be no, like that's just not an option. We can't do that. And so by all means, look at it. Is there something you tweak? Is there a creative way you could work around it? If the answer is for health and safety, there's just no way we can have buggies or pushchairs in church, that's fine, but just make sure that's really clear so you don't get some poor person, bringing their buggy in and then feeling like they've done the worst thing in the world, because that's not allowed. I think so often it takes the fear out of it if we can just give some expectations and just some information about what's going to happen. So I'm just checking some of your questions. Ruth says, we're working on being a more inclusive church, and all these questions also relate to parents wanting to bring children with additional needs or even an adult with additional needs. Yeah, absolutely. And just for anyone, even when you've got older children, I've really zoomed in here on some of the issues that are relevant to people with babies and toddlers, but these issues are true for, not the breastfeeding and the bottle feeding, but the can I leave early? Can I arrive late? What if they make noise? These are relevant for all sorts of people. So if that helps you sell it to your church leader or wider community, it's part of your overall welcome, then maybe that's helpful. So one of the ways that you can do this, we've talked about maybe having a leaflet or having some information on your website or social media, maybe on a Facebook group, something like that. Something that can be really helpful is making a little video. And Katie Hibberts, I don't think she's here, but she did such an amazing example of this. She did a baby group. She works at church in the Midlands. And when she was welcoming families back after lockdown, she literally did here's what you'll see when you come through the door. Here's what to expect. Here's where everything is. And I just thought it was brilliant. Totally removed the fear factor of what to expect and how to prepare for it. And we could do this for church as well, and just help people to know the different elements of church and what that looks like. Now, I would suggest, if you can, that you make one yourself for your church, because your church will look totally different to everyone else's church and you'll do things differently. But we have made, and we've got on our website, a little video that explains generally some things that might happen in church and how you can engage with it with a baby or toddler. So I'm going to show you a tiny clip of it now, just to give you an idea of some of the things that you might want to cover.
If you haven't been to church much before, some bits can seem a little bit weird. So I'm just going to talk you through some things that might happen, so you know what to expect and how you and your little one can be involved. So to start off with, arriving, most churches will have someone to welcome you at the door. Now, these people are here to help, so ask any questions that you might have. That could be about where to feed your baby, where to change them, where to play with them. They will know all of that. Lots of churches have a creche, a children's corner, or a children's group, something like that. So do feel free to ask about that. Then the service itself. The person at the front will explain what happens, and you might also have a service sheet, a book, or sometimes projected slides to help you follow along. Again, feel free to ask questions of anyone around you. And with your little one with you, you might want to whisper to them what's going on and point out some of those things. The service where your baby or toddler is baptised or dedicated will probably include some extra elements. Don't worry, the church leader will talk you through these in advance and what you and the godparents need to do. Then the music. Most churches sing songs together, either to God, about him, or both. And you'll see people connecting with him in different ways in this time. So some will sit down, some will stand up, some like to sing out really loudly, some like to just sit and listen to the words. Feel free to join in whatever way feels natural and comfortable for you. And help your little one to do that too, so they can watch what's going on around them and how different people are connecting. You might want to lift them up so they can see a little bit better, or move to a different space in the church where they've got more room to move around, to dance and enjoy the music. Most churches will also have prayers at some point too. This is just another way of connecting with God. There may be set prayers to join in with, and the words will either come up on a screen or be in a service sheet or a book, and you can say the words all together. Or it might be that one person just chats to God out loud from the front and everyone else listens. If you agree with what they're saying, you can say Amen, which means I agree. And you can teach your little one to join in with that as well, saying Amen or using the Makaton sign. Amen. There's usually a time where someone gives a talk to help people learn more about life with God. This will often refer to a little bit of the Bible, which will be read out or come up on the screen. And this is a longer period of being quiet. So most churches will be happy for you to grab your change bag and give your child some snacks, toys or books, or they may suggest that you take them to the creche or the children's corner at this point. There may be a section called the breaking of bread, communion, or the Eucharist, where the church has bread and wine together. I know that sounds a little bit odd, but it's really just remembering a meal that Jesus had with his friends. And it's a chance for us to remember Jesus dying on the cross and to thank him for being in our lives. If you'd rather not take part, that's absolutely fine. You can sit quietly and ask for a prayer or blessing instead of having the bread and wine. Thanks. After the service, or sometimes beforehand as well, there's normally a chance to grab a drink, a tea or a coffee, and chat to the people who've also come to church. This is a great opportunity to get to know them a bit better and to introduce you and your family. Do be honest, share the joys and struggles of your week. They might even offer to pray for you, and feel free to say yes or no, whatever you're comfortable with. And don't be embarrassed or shy about nipping off when you need to. This is normally lunchtime, and we all know little ones' tummies know when it's time to eat.
I say little ones, I mean my tummy. I don't know about you, when people keep chatting at church, you're like, it's lunchtime. So you get the idea there. That is obviously particularly aimed at people who haven't been to church before or haven't been with a baby or toddler. You can get to it by clicking babies and toddlers on our website, babies and toddlers, baptism and dedication preparation, and it's the video called Community. But yeah, as I say, adapt it for your context. That church, in fact, looks nothing like my church, and your church will probably look totally different. We tried to keep that quite broad, but you might be able to do something like that, either written or a video, just to help people feel relaxed and know what to expect and to feel welcome. Now, the other thing I wanted to touch on with helping people find their place within the service is people who have been Christians much longer and maybe just need some help working out how to engage with the service as a parent and with their baby or toddler. Lots of people have mentioned about the struggle to keep children quiet or the expectation. And I think sometimes a lot of the focus is on how do I keep my child happy and, whatever it is, keep giving them snacks or books or whatever. And that can become the whole focus of church. But can we model for them and give them some tools to help them engage with the service themselves in a way that they can explain and share with their little one? Now, not every day, I know, some days it really is, their entire focus will just be on their children and keeping them happy. But I do think there are some things that we can do. Now, in Parenting for Faith, we like to call this framing without shaming. And I hope that's memorable. But just the idea that can you frame, so can you give suggestions and explain things in a way that doesn't make people feel bad? If you say, it's really noisy in here, can please everyone with children take them out to the creche? Immediately people are going to feel guilty, and I know none of you would do that, but I think that probably has happened in churches at points, and people feel guilty, or they feel like they've done the wrong thing, or like they don't have options. But can you point out opportunities to engage, just to help people to take it to another level? What might you need to provide or adapt to make this possible? So I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and then I'd love you to think about your church context and think if there's an example that you could give, and we'll type those in the chat. So for example, say you're going into the prayers and there's toddlers running around and things, but you could say, okay, we're just going to have some time of talking to God now. If you've got a little one with you, we're going to be asking for us to know more of God's love. So if you feel comfortable, why don't you pick them up and give them a big cuddle as we pray this together? Or it could be something like, we're going to sing now. So if you've got little ones, feel free to move out. So you've got a little bit more space for them to move and dance around. If you're at the back, you're welcome to put them on your shoulders or lift them up so they can see a bit more. Or your church might have something like, here's some instruments that they can use if they want to, or feel free to just stay in your seat and worship from there. Or we're going to be doing a certain part of the service now, maybe communion or a baptism, or if your child can't see, feel free to come to the front and sit here. We've got a rug at the front for them. So have a little think now about your context and your community and where you are. What suggestions could you make that might help people to engage with an element of the service? But the key thing is without making them feel bad or guilty. So framing without shaming. I know this is quite hard. It's easier to do in the moment, but just have a think. And if you've got an example, type it in the chat, because I think that's really going to help other people. So maybe picture a Sunday service or a Sunday morning. What are the different ways that people could get involved? Or what could they do slightly differently that would just help their family to engage? Again, we've got a little bit on our website for this. If you type in framing without shaming, you'll get some more examples. I appreciate you might not want to share them, but maybe that's something you can just keep in mind if you're a service leader. Children help welcome actions when a particular word or words are said during the reading. Yeah, that can really help. I used an Easter response as part of the service last week and encouraged the children to join in with the responses. Brilliant. So yeah, if maybe there's something you could have alongside, some actions, or maybe a sheet that explains a little bit more. Invite children to come to the front so they can see what's happening. Yeah. My 4-year-old often tells me he likes to sit in the very front row, which I find the most cringeworthy and embarrassing thing ever. I hate it. But he said it's because he likes to see what's going on. Like, why would you not sit at the front? You'd sit at the front for a concert or a football match or something, so you can be part of the action. And just recognizing their experience is not very fun if you can just see people's backs or the back of their head. Alison says it's an intergenerational church, children woven into the whole service throughout. Brilliant. We'd love to learn from that. Sit with children on the floor at the front. Yeah. So give an option. And again, it's an option. It's not all children have to sit on the floor at the front, but if you'd like to see better, we do have this option. James says for chat and catch time, lying down on the floor, adults and children, or a large piece of paper at the front to draw what God's giving us, share it with the wider church. Yeah, so just giving options there. Those are really helpful. Thank you. And that's something to play around with. And I know it depends. Not all of you are necessarily the service leader or have the power or the capacity to do that. But in any elements where you are involved, just holding on to that principle of framing without shaming. Where can we make a suggestion that will help people engage, but not make them feel bad? Right. And then the third thing I said we'd look at in these last few minutes is creche rooms, spaces and sessions. So I'd love you to type into the chat, what's the goal of this space or time? So again, no right or wrong answer, every context is different. But if you have a children's corner or a creche room or a creche space, what's the goal of that space and time? What's the purpose of it? Oh, nice answers. You've been sharing all kinds of stories. I really like that. Alicia says, somewhere children and adults can have fun and feel welcome during the service. Great, so that welcome has come up again. They want to have fun. Let's give the young ones some input and teaching. Oh, Simon, you're doing a little bit of drawing on my screen. That's lovely. Do carry on. You've underlined it, so that's good. Welcoming, that it's safe, that it's a fun space. Yeah, absolutely. Bible story and a song to help them connect with God. Sorry, you've scrolled past Catherine. Okay, Kathy says the goal is to keep the kids quiet and not running wild, distracting the whole congregation. A comfortable space for mum and baby. Faith, to learn about God and connect with him, where parents can share faith with their children. An opportunity to meet other adults helping their children connect. Amazing. So there's a whole range of things we might want to do, and we might want to talk to our team and refine that a little bit more. What I'd want to ask is your current setup and way of doing things facilitating that? If you want it to be safe, if you want it to be welcoming, if you want it to be a supportive community, if you want it to be a space to connect with God, again, are there little things you could tweak or change that make that work better? I'm going to throw out a few suggestions. And again, I'd love to hear from you in the chat, other ideas. And these are just a couple that I've seen work. So one thing that might help is setting the atmosphere. Do you pray in your room before the session and during the session? Do you, or could you, have worship music playing? What about while you're interacting? Do you pray whilst you play with the children? Is the focus solely on the toys? Or could this be an opportunity to tell them, to give them some ideas to chat to God about the thing they just made out of Duplo? Or to ask their parent or carer, is there anything that they're struggling with at the moment that you could pray for them about? It could be nightmares or teething or toileting, there's a million things, but those parents and carers and children will be coming with issues and things that are going on. Could you tell God about those things together? Could you pray for them? Sometimes you just need to ask the questions and you'd be amazed at what comes out and how that fosters relationship and connection and community. Something we did in one of my churches that I loved was we had encouragement cards. So just little slips of cards. And in that context, quite a lot of the children were left for at least some of the session. And we just encouraged the team to pray beforehand and while they were playing with the children, and just quickly write down if they had something that was an encouragement for the parent. So it might be that the child joined in with the songs really well and tidied away nicely. It might be that they've seen their new skill. In that context, people were quite comfortable with catching from God and sharing. So the team would often share something that they'd been praying over the child, or a word or a picture or a Bible verse that they felt was particularly relevant. And I cannot tell you what a difference that made as a parent, and seeing to other parents to say, hey, we really loved having your child today. Here's a prayer and encouragement for the rest of their week. Or we've noticed they've got really good at sharing and we just wanted to affirm that and encourage that. Or we've noticed God's really growing, courage, or they're really starting to engage with worship. Like how exciting is that? And just to journey with the parents and connect with them in that way. And that's really simple. All you need is some pens and paper. Some of you have mentioned about having a worship time and a Bible story and a space to pray or chat and catch. It's often what we say in Parenting for Faith. So a time to tell God about things that are going on in their life and to ask him things and see if they get any words or pictures, have any thoughts or feelings from God back. There's lots of different ways that you can do that. Sometimes it feels like a little bit more effort if everyone's playing to wrap that up and have a pause. But you can say to them, this is really important. God is brilliant and we love to tell him how great he is. And one of the ways we can do that is by shaking and wiggling our bodies and shouting and singing for him, whatever terminology, whatever you use. But because there you are teaching the parents as well as the children, you're giving them some tools and some things that they can use at home as well. One of the other things we mentioned, I think when we were talking in the breastfeeding as well, is it possible to have a video or audio link to the service? If it's in a different room and there's a lot of parents who are in there and their experience of church week on week is going to be sat in a different room with a child, how can you make it so that they're part of that community and that teaching? Sometimes a video or an audio link is a way to do that, or a podcast afterwards. Just looking here. Anna says, I saw a video once filmed by a child who had a GoPro strapped to them and recorded what they saw during a church service. It was enlightening and very powerful. Oh, wow. So that's kind of a comment on the what it's like for a child and what they can actually see. Fantastic. So yeah, just a few ideas there. What have you done? What have you seen? I'd love to hear in the chat. How have you met those aims and those goals of making little tweaks, doing things slightly differently so that people feel safe, so that they feel welcome, so that they feel connected to God and to each other? So start typing away in the chat. And then we've just got 5 minutes before we gather back together. So then we'll have a look if there's any questions or anyone who wants to share a little bit more about what they're doing, where they are. Make my chat box a little bit bigger. You shared loads of good ideas already, so I may have exhausted those. I just love to hear, because people are coming up with new ideas all the time. And I'm a big fan in children's and church ministry of not reinventing the wheel, but borrowing, sharing, copying ideas. James says, I attended another church as a family, great creche base, which was about 80% playtime, but had a brief input. Felt like they knew that it doesn't all have to be formal input. Yeah, absolutely. We're also not saying that you need to line your babies and toddlers up and get them reciting books of the Bible. Keep it age appropriate, keep the expectations realistic. Claire says they've created praise packs for toddlers during the service. That sounds great, Claire. What do they involve? Do you want to unmute yourself? Or type if you prefer, either's fine. Vicky says we use a verse of the Sleeping Bunny song. Yeah, go ahead, Claire.
Yes, we need to hear what that verse is. Well, we don't have sufficient resources to have our toddlers or over with like the Sunday school, or to even have a creche space that's separate to the service. We just don't have enough people. So, but we are getting a number of toddlers coming through from our newly created toddler group. So it felt important to welcome them. So in the praise pack is literally, it's a welcome booklet, really simple, about all the stuff that you just said, about where to find the toilets and stuff like that. But also it's got ideas of how they can engage their children during the prayers and things, like we have bubble pops and we've got prayer cards that they can post into the prayer box that we always have out. So, you know, saying sorry and thank you and stuff like that. And then also they've each got a Bible story in with an item that goes with it. For example, the lost sheep, and there is a sheep puppet, or Daniel in the Lion's Den has a puppet, and just questions to ask about that story. So if they're reading that rather than taking part in the main sermon, and we just ask that the parents whisper during that time. And then also a very simple craft idea related to their Bible story, with using stickers and stuff that is really unmessy. I'm more than happy to share what we put in each of them if that helps, but we've only just started using them, so I really can't report back how successful it's going to be, but it was something that we just thought we'd give a try to now that we've got more people coming.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant. If you could, if you're happy to send those to us, that would be great. Or we could
it's not rocket science, it literally was just, you know.
But sometimes it saves someone some crucial time, which is a real blessing. Thank you. Anna says using a visual timetable can help. Yes, I forgot to mention that. Not just for families with babies and toddlers. I was in a church where we did it because we had quite a few children with additional needs. I cannot tell you how many adults and older children said it was so nice to know what was going on and when it was going to happen. And all I did was laminate a big sheet made, so there was some writing and with a very simple explanation and a picture. And we just stuck those up in whatever order, or whatever was going on in church that week. And people found that really helpful. Thank you, Anna. That's really helpful. Yes, James and Ruth are saying, yes, please. Vicky's recommending Flame Creative. Yes, they're brilliant. They've got loads of stuff. Vicky, we also want to know the verse of the Sleeping Bunny song to get children to calm down and listen to God. You don't have to sing. You can type or say it to us. But there are definitely a few of us that are interested in that.
Probably easier to explain and sing. I actually tweaked an idea that I saw originally in the book Blended Church, where the author talks about playing Heavenly Sleeping Lions. Well, that's not a game we do with our kids, but we do sing see the little bunnies sleeping till noon, shall we go and wake them with a merry tune? Oh, so still are they ill, wake up soon. And you get them shh, and we do it once where we then wake them up straight away and get them to hop. But the next time round we say, right, well, we did a bit of speaking to God earlier, now we're going to listen to God. And I also say, little ones, it's the grown-ups too, it's everybody. I think I need to add what you were saying about thoughts and feelings, because I think that's the bit that I've been missing. I've talked about it being pictures and words, but I've not done thoughts and feelings, so that's what I'll tweak.
Fantastic, thank you so much for sharing that. And there's loads more. I've obviously only touched on very, very briefly there, listening to God and chat and catch. If you go onto our website, we've got a whole session on that, and we've also got under 5 specific ones. So I'm aware, you know, we need to help them recognise all the different ways God can speak, and also to kind of learn and practice discernment as well. So we have got 27 seconds. Has anyone got a burning, brilliant idea? Or I think that's ambitious, isn't it? I'm gonna stop there. And we'll head back into the main session. But thank you so much. And as I say, we will have a chance to discuss a little bit more in a moment.